The three guys in the front of the squad just lit him up, filled him with holes, and killed him. Caught him red-handed. There was an IED we were able to prevent, and we held security. And I remember just kind of looking over this guy and watching him die, and just didn't feel anything. My name is Andrew Higgins. I served in the Marine Corps from September 2007 to 2011. Did a booze cruise with 11 Bravo back in 2009, 13th MEU, and then a combat deployment to Afghanistan in 2010. Now I'm a VA readjustment counselor for the Vet Center, so I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. It's pretty much similar to social worker and licensed clinical counselor. I've been at a vet center for the past 5 years about, and then before that practicing since 2016. So I think I've been doing this for about 8 or 9 years. And I don't know if I should say I'm not representing the VA or the vet center in this video at all. So I grew up in Tracy, California. That's like a little drive-through city outside of the Bay Area. It's close enough to be able to claim Bay Area, I think, but not close enough to be in it. So kind of a small town that's grown a little bit, not a whole lot to do there. Grew up in a very conservative Christian household, 3 brothers, and what was kind of unique about it, we were all homeschooled up until different points. So I was homeschooled up until my sophomore year in high school, and then just really wanted to kind of break free from that. And that was probably one of the most difficult things I've done, going from all the jitters and adaptations you would normally go, in kindergarten and elementary school, to now doing it as a sophomore in high school. So that was particularly challenging. I know the nature of talking about your childhood is, you're critical of your parents. I've got nothing really bad to say about them. I think that they gave me the most important things that I needed to succeed in life. I felt loved, I felt supported, I felt safe, I felt competent, and I carried those things with me into every situation thereafter, which I think helped me to cope a lot. I mean, that was kind of my foundation for how to view the world, how to conceptualize things, looking at it from a lens of this is a sin or not a sin. And I don't necessarily disagree with it. It's, for some people, it's not, for others. I wish it had kind of been presented to me as an option, like this is what people may believe, this is what people could believe. It was kind of just like, this is what we believe. And then I had to kind of figure that out later on, at a much later age, what I believed. My dad was a minister, so it was kind of like I was a little bit always at church. I was kind of living in a bubble a little bit, not really exposed to, too much media. Music, was kind of very strict, who I could hang out with, what I could do. And so when I kind of broke free out of that, about when I was like 14 and a half, 15, I didn't really have any kind of way of moderating, my behavior, and everything was kind of extreme. It was very impulsive. It was kind of wild at some points. There was a bit of recreational drug use throughout those years, in my sophomore, junior, and senior year. So there's no real sense of moderation, and I guess the logical answer for where to go after that was the Marine Corps, branching off from the church at that age. Now we've talked about it, with them. We've had some conversations. I've kind of shielded them from what they probably, don't need to hear at this point. I'm in a good place now. So I would say, no, I had to lie a lot. I had to, because I wanted to do what I wanted to do. Strict parents make good liars, as I've been told. So I had to, kind of be able to work my way around the truth a little bit to get what I wanted at the time. So I imagine there was probably some repercussions for that later on. What inspired me to kind of go the military route, especially the Marine Corps, is I was good at school. I didn't really like it. Like most people getting out of high school, I couldn't have imagined what that would have been like going to college and doing that all over again. And I didn't really want to be in debt. I also had a fascination with death at the time, so I really kind of wanted to get probably as close to death as I possibly could without dying, just to see what that would be like. some of the drug use was, brought me probably a little bit closer than I would have wanted at times too. So I had a little bit of a taste of that. And it was just, I could sell it to you, I was like, I get to work out. I get to be with, other like-minded individuals. I get to shoot guns. I just couldn't see any future, past the Marine Corps. And there was something really, really kind of peaceful about that. I thought about it a lot and not exactly sure where it came from. I knew it was something I had to explore. Otherwise I was always going to have it. I don't know if that's like a biological thing or socialization thing. It certainly wasn't in my household, but I know there's other people like that. My recruiting experience, I already knew what I wanted to do probably when I was 16 or 17. So that kind of alleviated a lot of the existential angst of like, what am I going to do after high school? It's like, I already checked that box and people are scrambling for colleges. And I'm like, I got to figure it out. So I was probably, my best friend and I were the easiest, recruitments of the year. We just kind of walked in with reasonably high ASVAB scores to where we had options, and we're just like, we just want to be 0311s, make us dumb grunts. That's what we want to be, and ship us out after the summer at least, so we can enjoy that post high school. So I did the Pooley program, nothing special, just kind of did time there, and pretty much the check in the box for recruiters. For boot camp, my experience, like everyone else's, was just that initial shock, which kind of subsided after a few weeks, and you get kind of comfortable with the layout of the land. Ironically, I feel like my transition from homeschool to public school, kind of prepped me, for my transition to boot camp. I was very comfortable being alone for long periods of time. I felt like I was pretty resilient, and was okay with being unhappy for long periods of time too, which, can be kind of a other side to that coin, later on. Just a pretty standard boot camp experience. I thought everyone had my experience, and so I started talking to some of these vets that I see, and there are like attempted murders and suicides and all kinds of stuff that happened. So I was, I guess, fortunate that, that didn't happen to me. But yeah, that was back when there were some fires on Pendleton. And so we weren't sure if we were going to be able to do the Crucible. So the biggest deal at the time was, are we going to be real Marines if we don't do the Crucible? That was 2007, September. So September, October, November. I think there was like Fox Company that didn't end up doing their Crucible or something. Just something that comes to mind as far as boot camp. They make you play these games, and they're meant to kind of like turn you on each other and be able to thrive in the chaos of boot camp and be able to keep your composure and hold each other accountable. There's a big group shame, kind of mentality, within the Marine Corps. And it's very effective. It's very effective if you're playing by the rules of the game with people that agree to play them as well. But once you get out into the, quote, real world, in the civilian world, it's kind of hard to play that game, if people don't play by the rules. The conditioning process of making a Marine is like they completely break you down. They even don't let you wear your uniform correctly, right? Because they want you to feel sluggish and like a sloth and gross, and they even say like you're disgusting, you're fat, your fat body, and those terms don't usually translate well, when you're at your next job outside of the Marine Corps. But you can do that, if somebody gains 5 pounds, like you knife hand them and call them out and be like, hey, what are you eating? What are you eating, bud? Let's go for a run. Let's go drink and then go for a run. So it's kind of an insulated culture, and it's very specific. And there's a lot of group punishment that happens, to hold each other accountable. I remember one time we didn't do something right, the many things that you screw up on. And so they make you take your running shoes, which are intelligently named Go Fasters. You have to explain this to people because they're like, what are Go Fasters? Like, are you special? And they made us throw them in a big pile, in the middle of the squad base. There's a mountain of shoes that look exactly the same, of different sizes. And they say you have about 2 minutes to go grab those and get back online, get in your straight line. And everybody just runs up, and you know how they count down. It's like 2 minutes, 150, 145, 90 seconds, 2 seconds, and then you have to run over. I just grabbed any pair of shoes. So for the rest of boot camp, for whatever reason, I had like a size 9 and a size 12, and just getting blisters in one, and just too much room in the other. So I mean, but you didn't want to be that person. You never wanted to be that one person that got caught, with their hand in the cookie jar, because not only the drill instructors would punish you, but your friends would, So there was a real accountability aspect that was built around more so. Don't be that guy, don't be the weak link in the chain, rather than like, hey, this is how strong we can be together. That comes later on when they build you back up. Every time a plane passed, they'd have to stop with it because it was so loud. They'd have to stop what they were saying, and they would look up just pissed off, like they were about to fight this plane. And it just, it just conditioned you to be able to just be aggressive, all the time. We were part of the generation where they were trying to start to question kill. It was like they wanted you to say get some. So that was like the big stand that some drill instructors were taking, was like, we still say kill, but some still say get some. So they were trying to, I guess, weed that out, but I don't think it's changed. School of Infantry, I found my way into being a squad leader. So I kind of dabbled in a little bit of leadership there, and I managed to keep that position throughout the entirety, which was fueled by my desire to not have fire watch on the weekends. So the squad leaders got out of that. And so I was like, this is really some incentive to be a leader, because there was no other upside. It seemed like you were getting, you were always having to be accountable for everyone else, and you weren't online anymore. You were pacing back and forth and checking things. So I got a little taste of that, which kind of set me up to be a lance corporal in getting dropped to the fleet, which I thought was going to be a good thing. But apparently senior lance corporals don't like boot lance corporals that have not deployed yet. So out of the frying pan into the fire. First unit after School of Infantry was 1-1 Bravo. So that was in Camp Horno and Camp Pendleton. I think they were still on deployment coming from Iraq, or they might have been on their post-deployment leave, and so we didn't really see them. So we kind of lived in fear and anticipation for several weeks, in the squad bay, which were named the crack houses for good reason. I talked to a Somali vet that also lived in them, and at that time they were supposed to be demolished, so they could still be there. I'm not sure. Hopefully not. So we kind of lived in fear for a bit, and then they came back, and it was everything we thought it'd be. It's all the traditional hazing, and you go through boot camp, and you're like, finally, I'm a Marine. You go through SOI, and you're like, okay, now I'm really a Marine. You get to your unit, and you're like, am I ever going to be like a real Marine? Like I keep getting told I'm nothing, and this piece of shit, and I think I wear the uniform. I have that same rank as that guy, but it's just one big cycle, and you learn later on, like everyone's a boot to somebody. A boot being before one overseas tour, so a Marine that hasn't deployed yet. In the infantry world, that's kind of like your mark of, I did something. So you ideally join the infantry because you want to do that, so you're doing whatever you can to go on a deployment, not avoid one. So a lot of hazing, that went on for almost a year, maybe a little bit less than a year before we actually deployed on the 13th MEU. The Marine Expeditionary Unit got to go to some of the nicer places of the world. Thailand, Guam isn't listed as like one of the nicer places of the world, but we went to Guam, Dubai, Djibouti, Hawaii. So we got to kind of have the booze cruise experience. They weren't going to be able to pin me. As you know, pinning is where you get your chevrons, and then you take off the backings on the collar, and then you smash them into your chest until you bleed. And everyone in the platoon who's your new rank or above gets to do that. So they were upset that they weren't able to do that to me. So it was mainly just hazing in more of an accountability way, like now you have to suffer because these people under you are suffering. And the hazing, when it's done, without detriment, can be kind of an initiation, right? It's kind of part of the culture. Unfortunately, you'll have an 18 or a 19-year-old come in, and their leader's a 20 or 21-year-old, right? And so that's not a whole lot of maturity in a few years. So not all of them are trained in how to be a leader, and how to lead Marines and how to also tear them down but build them back up. Sometimes there's just like an extension of, we're just going to tear you down this whole time and not know exactly when to bring you up, but we'll know when that time comes. So there was a little bit of that. There's a little bit of resentment that builds. And of course, people take it too far, right? Like doing air squats in the showers with the Kevlar on, and flak jacket is different than, we're going to pin you until, maybe you chip your collarbone or something like that, right? Now you've got an injury. Or hazing somebody until they have to go to BAS, the, basic aid station, and now they're combat ineffective. So there's a balance there. I always wanted to go on a combat deployment, so you get back from a MEU, and it feels a little bit like, okay, I'm not a boot anymore, but I also don't feel like a senior. I don't feel like I've done what I wanted to do. So you're kind of living in half-ass land for a little bit. Like I'm not being treated like shit, which is favorable, but I also don't feel like I've done what I came to do. Getting out after that, from the deployment, back to Horno, being a senior, I wanted to be the best leader I could. We thought we were preparing for Afghanistan, and then that deployment got given to somebody else. So the only reason I was able to go to 2-1 Echo is because there was a big spice pop. And I'm not sure if you remember what spice is. It's like this artificial weed, in a sense. That was what it was kind of being advertised as. There was somebody who was dealing it, they got caught up and sold out everyone they were selling it to. So actually, because of that, 20 plus slots opened up. And so we were able to, a lot of the guys I was in with from 1-1 Bravo were able to go to 2-1 Echo to deploy. So that kind of set the stage for that. Well, once we figured out we were going on the combat deployment, because there was a lot of in between. I think we got fapped out to go to an air station for like a week or two before we knew we were going to be able to go over. And so, you have that conversation with yourself. It's like, maybe this was fine, maybe this was okay, and I'll just get a camp services job for 1.5 years and just kind of fade away. And then this opportunity came up, and it was voluntary, so it was like, okay, this is something I actually have to commit to. That's on me. I can't blame the man, because I'm going on this deployment. So I knew that there was unfinished business, and that I still couldn't really see a future after the Marine Corps as it was. So this seemed like a kind of a natural thing to do. There's like this piece and this idea that I didn't have to come back. So prepping for it, it was finally like the training actually had meaning. It wasn't just train to be ready. It was, I'm going to need this. And I wasn't a boot anymore, so I could focus on helping the other guys get ready for the deployment and myself as well. So the workup felt more relevant, the training leading up to it. Yeah, so we didn't really know what we were getting into. The mission's never clear exactly until you get there, and even then it's not always clear, being all the way at the bottom. I was a corporal at the time, so as a team leader. We flew into Cop Rankle when it was, didn't have internet or anything like that, and then from there pushed out in a squad size element to PB Greer. And that was in the Helmand province in Afghanistan in the Garmsir district. So the unit before us had done some work, and we ripped with them for a few weeks, and then just did combat patrols pretty much every day for the rest of our time there for about 6 months. There was an emphasis on hearts and minds, so we were kind of meeting with the locals and the leaders there, give out pencils and paper and things like that. IEDs were the main threat. Our squad got really good at finding IEDs. Our point man, Justin Disjardin, was able to find many IEDs. Eventually one of them got him and messed up his leg. He was good to be medevaced, but eventually lost his leg in a hospital, trying to keep it. So we owe a lot to him. And also our other point man, Logan, was able to pick up the slack, and they kind of led the way in our Ranger file. You walk everywhere in a straight line with a mine detector, which is a metal detector. It's not a mine detector. It's not special. So we were able to stay safe because of them. So a lot of IEDs, we found over 20. A few small arms engagements, nothing, it wasn't the push to Iraq. I've talked to so many other veterans in my line of work that have had just incredible stories that like you feel like you've almost done nothing, when you talk to some of these guys and men and women. The first 3 months were primarily when we faced the small arms engagements and the IEDs. There was one morning where, you had to get up real early. It was real cold at that time of year, so it was a real chore to get up and set traps. But, I remember we went out on patrol, and I was lugging the Guardian around. I'm not sure if you've heard of those. The Guardians are like these big electronic backpacks that you wear on top of everything that you have. You're walking everywhere. And they're supposed to disrupt these like radio frequencies, so if there's a remote controlled IED, then you won't get blown up. But mainly pressure plates is what we dealt with. So, we were lying in wait for a while, and the sun starts to come up, and so we come out of like some bushes that we found, and in this intersection is this guy just laying wire, just literally caught red-handed. And I didn't see it at first because I was kind of around this berm, but the three guys in the front of the squad just lit him up, just filled him with holes and killed him. And it was a good kill. Caught him red-handed. There was an IED we were able to prevent, and we held security. And I remember just kind of looking over this guy and watching him die, and just didn't feel anything. And I'm like, I guess it wasn't something worth kind of chasing. So from there, I kind of gained a little bit more of an appreciation for life rather than having a fascination for seeing it end. It wasn't me that did it, but watching it, kind of gave a different perspective. It's not all combat, and most of it's not. It's just kind of figuring out what to do with the downtime in between patrols. And during the rain, our downtime was spent trying to get all the water out of our tent that they finally gave us, because it would flood all the time. So there was like half a foot of water in there for probably a month. Just trying to figure out how to stay out of that. And, you do dumb stuff to be able to pass the time. Like for Thanksgiving, we were able to find a turkey, to be able to have, and we were able to cook that. And there's one thing we were doing, I won't say who it was, but in our squad, there was this guy who was just always acting very peculiar. And so we decided to secretly videotape him, throughout his whole time there for 6 months. Probably have hours and hours of footage, lost on these cameras. But him waking up, him walking to post, just everything, every little thing, because he'd just make all these weird facial expressions, and, he would just wake up and just like look at the ground, for like 10 minutes. And like, what is he thinking? What is he doing right now? Eventually we told him, and it kind of lost its flair after that. My buddy had a shrine of Kim Kardashian. He was collecting all the newspaper clippings and magazine, clippings that we'd get. And he had like a nice little cardboard shrine right next to our rack. So the little things that get you through. Going to Afghanistan, it was all I wanted. I really thought I was going to die there. And it, not in like any kind of morbid way, like I wanted to. I really didn't know what else I could do after that. I didn't envision any kind of life, and there was a tremendous amount of peace and calm and relief that I felt that I think took away a lot of the fear of dying and believing that it was supposed to happen. And then, it didn't. After 3-4 months. I realized that like maybe I'm probably not going to die. Like I think I need to start thinking about a future. Kind of like when you start to save for retirement too late. You're like, I might actually make it through this life. I think I might need to start squirreling money away. So I was ready to go back. In the last 2 months or so, you're kind of over it at that point. Things lose their flair, and coming back, I was elated and I was excited. No kind of alcohol tolerance whatsoever. So a few beers does the trick, and you build that tolerance back up pretty quick. So, definitely some difficulty transitioning back. I quickly got out, and I should say that the process of getting out is is not streamlined, right? They don't make it easy getting out, in the sense that the military does not give you a whole lot of assistance. In fact, you're kind of treated like, oh, you didn't stay, so we're not going to, help you anymore. It's like you chose the other things, so you're not in the club. So they spend years and millions of dollars conditioning you into being a certain thing and acting a certain way. And there's like a kind of a laughable, in my time, it was called TAPS, a 3-day program that's more so administrative, and it tells you like, there's a GI Bill, there's disability, or there's this, and good luck, and just kind of send you to the wind. You have to, it's kind of like a treasure hunt, you get like this piece of paper, and then like there's these 20 signatures you have to get, and Camp Horno is the place you go, and sometimes outside of base, and you have to get these signatures, and you have to do them in maybe a few weeks. And half the time you go and you get a signature, and these people don't even know what you're talking about. They're like, no, you have to go to the other place, on the other side of base, that takes you like 30 minutes to walk to. So it's a whole process. There's no team helping you. There's no transitional assistance. So that was difficult. That was frustrating. I had the foresight to be able to sign up for community college at Orange Coast College. So I was able to kind of transition into that and started school immediately, which was good because I was getting a paycheck. Unfortunately, community college feels a lot like high school. So I absolutely hated that for 2 semesters. Fortunately for me, I should say, like when you get out, you tend to lose your sense of purpose and belonging and camaraderie, which even if you are really ready to get out, you still tend to miss those things. There's a structure, there's a reliability that you get in 4 years, and we're not even talking about the guys that, spend 20 years, in conditioning. It's a whole other thing. So I was pretty lost, and then I met my now wife, had a 1.5-year-old son, and so I'm a stepfather. And she kind of gave me a reason to be able to make those changes and kind of improve myself for the sake of someone else, which is very kind of Marine Corps-like, because you're always trying to improve yourself to keep somebody alive. So they both really kind of gave me a reason to get out of community college, start doing some domestic private security work, and go to school and just be able to provide, be able to kind of be a team leader again, and just with less rank. Yeah, why I got into what I do now as a therapist, I would say I'd never had a desire to be a therapist for my entire life. I didn't really know what they did. I'd never been to therapy. I was just chipping away at a psychology degree, getting a paycheck, cashing the GI Bill, and just kind of existing. And then one of my professors was a marriage and family therapist, and I was able to kind of see from her perspective how it could help people and how I could be good at that. And so did my master's at Alliant International University, and currently in the PhD program, for Alliant. I'm in my last semester of that. And I'm doing that because I'm trying to maybe address this issue with the reintegration program, that we have with the military, which is that it doesn't quite exist. I think one thing that kind of turned me on to being a therapist is that it's definitely always challenging. There's something always new, but there's a lot that's always the same. You have a system to work with. You actually feel like you're helping people. And I kind of drudged through that a little bit until I was found the vet center, where I was able to actually work with my population again. And I'd wanted nothing to do with the Marine Corps, the military, getting out, and then I kind of found my way back into the culture, and now have a heart for it and the people I see. But I suffered, I mean, if you set aside things like military sexual trauma, PTSD, all these diagnoses, these things, most people struggle with transitioning out, as I did. I had terrible insomnia. I was depressed. We talked about resilience earlier, and the resilience coin is on one side. You can carry much more than other people can, but that means you also carry a heavier load for a longer period of time. And if you don't have an avenue to be able to release yourself of that, you carry it. You become burdened and you become weak to the point where it's more difficult for you to seek help further on down the road. So I went back to a lot of the recreational drug use, after the Marine Corps that I was talking about in high school. just all the standard stuff, alcohol, weed, ketamine, acid, Molly, ecstasy, coke, the basics, the stuff that everyone does. Just trying to find kind of a feeling, just trying to be able to find stability and be able to artificially induce my emotions because I didn't know how to regulate them, on my own. Exercise has always been a saving grace, the ability to regulate my mood and feel good about myself. I think that's a must. I don't know how people are doing life without exercising. I really don't. I had to kind of get out of that cycle and wanted to better myself. And so I've always found that the redirection of focus is better than just trying not to be focused anymore. Just focus on the wrong things. Once I got into the vet center, after the first few years and talking to these incredible, men and women in there, I realized that there's a real problem with the reintegration system and that it doesn't exist, like I said. And that this phrase started to come up, institutional betrayal, which is a term coined by Dr. Jennifer Freed, and mainly in the context of sexual assault and PTSD, and it's in like the healthcare industry where people don't feel taken care of. But I started to think of the lack of transitional services going from the military to the civilian world as an institutional betrayal, because by definition, it is through, you give everything to an organization, and then either through malicious action, where they attack you in certain ways, or through negligence, they don't support you, that in itself is a betrayal. And so there's a lot of research, especially a lot of qualitative research, where people are telling their stories about their difficulties in transitioning out, but the onus, the responsibility is always put back on the veteran. They do these studies like, see, they're having difficulty transitioning. Like, how can they not do that, right? What can they do differently? And it's like there's no real responsibility put on the military. And I'm not anti-military, I'm very pro-military. But I'm pro-military in that I'd like them to have a better reintegration program. It's like, why would you not decondition or help people to redirect their focus to other things and getting out when you spend years and millions of dollars in transitioning them into being not even just a killer or a warrior, but a certain culture, a way of thinking. And, it's just the way that you talk to somebody and the way that you hold them accountable, by their weight standards, even something like that, like you can't do at your job at Target, and I feel like I can say that because I've held a job at Target before. It's just a different culture. And that may seem obvious, but when you get out, it's not obvious, especially if you're a young 22, 23-year-old like I was, got out when I was 23. It's just the way you are. Fuck is a noun, an adjective, and a verb. It was part of my vernacular every day, which is fine if you're an assistant that is able to facilitate that. Not so good if you're raising your hand in class and trying to answer a question. Things I've learned from doing this job that I've had, definitely the identity, is a big one. What you do, who you talk to, how you talk to them, the military culture. It creates such a strong military identity, and when you get out, you lose that. And I think that we are very much meaning-oriented. We're meaning-oriented creatures. Man's Search for Meaning is a great book about that. We find meaning in our intrapersonal, psyche, our interpersonal relationships with people, even the ability to make meaning out of unavoidable suffering. That was something that we could always do in the Marine Corps. I can just speak to that because I was in it. You have to go out in the field and train, or even if you're on deployment, you go out on patrol and, it's freezing and like, of course this would happen to us, we got the Army's hand-me-down gear, of course we would get that, but we'll make it work because we're Marines. And there's a real pride in that. It's hard to be able to make meaning out of suffering if you don't know why it's happening, where's the lesson in it? Am I being punished, or is this part of the plan, or there's nobody else to hold you accountable or give you that support, to kind of explain why. So I think that identity is huge. Like I said before, that sense of purpose, like what is my purpose? What am I supposed to do? I don't think we're supposed to look at the military as the best time of our life and there's nothing else to do after that. There's too much life left to live. It's a real waste. You condition people into being these very productive machines, to be able to handle the chaos and manage these leadership roles. And there's just a really poor job at filtering them into doing something else. It's like you're just sending them to the wind. And there's a lot of research to support that. If people are not given those transitional services, they suffer in getting back from deployments and reintegration. Everything trickles down. Forget even just intrapersonal stuff like anxiety and depression. We carry who we are into every situation with our families, spouses, with our kids, interacting with people at the grocery store. If you are upset about your life and don't have a sense of purpose and belonging and don't feel like you fit in a society, I think you're crazy if you don't think that affects every conversation you have, everything you do, everything you choose not to do. So it's important to address that deficit because it trickles down to like parenting. A lot of vets struggle with parenting, from what I've seen, and myself at times too, because you can try, but it's not usually very effective. You can't treat your child like a Marine, right? Even the way you discipline, it's like they didn't sign up for boot camp. The important part of conditioning is when it's effective, it has to be voluntary. It has to be consensual. Everyone volunteers for boot camp, at least in recent years. So, just even having a better reintegration program that might be able to help people with parenting, to be like, all right, what would you do if your kid did this? It's like, well, maybe try doing this because that's actually only effective for a grown man, and maybe not a 5-year-old. Maybe your 5-year-old doesn't have to be tough yet. Maybe they just need to be loved, and maybe you can figure out resilience later. Ultimately, that is kind of the ultimate loss, right? When someone goes to that place and decides to kill themselves. Everything we do is to prevent that, really, from going to that place. And I'm currently doing research for my dissertation, to be able to assess the current adequacy of the reintegration program and to see if people perceive, if they believe it was inadequate as an institutional betrayal, and that will start to put more of a responsibility on the military to help people transition. Another project I'm doing on the side of that is to be able to create a hypothetical transitional program that is realistic for the military to be able to implement, which originally my lofty goal was like, let's make this 3 months, like boot camp. Seems logical. It's probably not going to be cost effective and the military is not going to bite on 3 months. So I'd settle for a month. I'd settle for a month of weekly classes, maybe like 4 times a week where you're going in, you get a little bit of a hip pocket class on maybe finances, maybe family life, different topics that you would want to just at least be able to present people with. And then you break out into groups, groups of your peers. You separate officers, separate higher enlisted, separate people that have had combat experience. You meet them where they're at. Talk about what are you going to do after this, and you make these cohorts of people as they transition out so that they actually create a support system, which they've always had in the military. There's always this accountability. Why would you not have that getting out? You have dedicated, maybe even a separate position outside of a vet center, some kind of readjustment counselor where they're doing these therapy sessions, and it has to be mandatory. People aren't going to go to this voluntarily. I wouldn't have, I wanted to get out. I want my DD-214, the grass is greener. Like, I don't need this shit, I don't need therapy. And we have to normalize, not even as therapy, just this is the last phase of your enlistment. This is just what you do. You get into a firefight, or you defuse an IED, you get back to base, you do a debrief. Like, all right, what went wrong? What went well? You need to tighten up. You need to loosen up. Why wouldn't you do that with the entirety of your military career? Whether that's 4 years or 20 years. I think it's important. So you have to make it mandatory to normalize it so it's not a punishment. It's not you're broken, because that's the attitude in the military is you go to the therapist, the wizard, when you're broken, and then you're ostracized from your unit. So we don't want that. But through that assessment process in this hypothetical program, people get filtered into more specialized forms of care. The people that actually do have PTSD, which is a lot less than get the diagnosis, they will get treatment for PTSD, effective forms of treatment like CPT and PE and EMDR and all those acronyms, things that are more specialized for treating trauma and PTSD. And that can be a quiet process, and it should be something separate from the unit, that your unit doesn't know about, because if you have something like this, the military wants to treat it, right? They want to treat it while you're still in, and that's not going to work, right? Because people want to get out. So you have to be able to do both. You have to be able to give people their EAS, where they get out, and their treatment to where it doesn't affect their benefits or their ability to actually exit the military. So I think that's part of it, and just really ending it how we began it, with support, and normalizing this is just a part of the process. I mean, there's a lot of veteran organizations out there. I feel like we're kind of disorganized with them, like somebody's always hearing about a new one and referring someone to one. We really got to get better about having a streamlined process of knowing what these are and if they're legitimate. There's such a deficit in these programs that veterans get frustrated and just go do it themselves, right? I mean, there's a million nonprofits of veterans helping other veterans, which is great. I would say that what has been most helpful transitioning and kind of bringing people back to the culture and addressing these issues one is the recreational groups. A lot of vet centers, they'll put on recreational groups like archery, and they'll kind of push jiu-jitsu and kayaking and paddleboarding. That's the other one, and paddleboarding. So kind of getting people back out in nature, but in groups, supportive groups where they feel safe and supported. And not everything has to be therapy, right? I mean, not everything was combat. So it makes sense that we would integrate that into treatment, and we try to when we can. Equine therapy, that's a good one. Equestrian therapy, where you are learning how to ride a horse, but then also learning how to regulate your own emotional state by working with the animal. We've got some good partners with the vet center for that. As far as therapy goes, you can get something in individual therapy you can't get anywhere else, and you can really get something in group therapy that you can't get in individual therapy. There's something extremely powerful and at times very cathartic to be able to be in a group with people who are dealing with the same things you're dealing with, and to not always have it be so clinical. Not everything is like, especially usually not like, what are your PTSD symptoms like today? Are you drinking again? It's like, yeah, all those things are fine, but we need to address the other things that are exacerbating that, making it worse. So we'll talk about relationships. We'll talk about deployments at times. We'll talk about, did you keep anything? You have any keepsakes? You have any war trophies? Did you do anything you'd regret? And sometimes it's as simple as we talk about the funny stories. We talk about like I did before, you film your buddy when he's not watching, and then surprise him with 4 months of footage. That's like, you need that sometimes. Not every week, not every 2 weeks can be like, let's talk about the gritty stuff. But if you don't have that, where else are you going to do it? A lot of guys just go to the bar and get drunk and then tell a stranger and regret it afterwards. I am doing a study based on military institutional betrayal. It's a very quick, down and dirty, 5 to 8 minute anonymous Qualtrics survey that just asks veterans who have served at least 4 years of active duty, and Vietnam vets who have served at least 2 years. It was a little bit different back then, and then everything in between. It's basically just asking questions, assessing your experience in reintegrating back in a civilian society. I think there's a real deficit, there's a negligence on the military's part in providing us those services, and so I want to put the responsibility back on them if people feel that way. That's what the study will determine, if they feel that way. So very brief, be very helpful. The study will close probably March 17th, I think it is. So any participation would be appreciated. Help me graduate. So I would like to see first if people view the lack of transitional services that they get out for psychological, social reconditioning. I'd like to see if they view that as an institutional betrayal on the military's part, where the responsibility is supposed to be on them rather than the person themselves. So the questions will determine if, one, they do view it as they either received adequate or inadequate services, and if they feel inadequate services, then there's like 13 or 14 questions asking them, did you have this specific type of experience? Do you feel like that was related to institutional betrayal itself? And then based on the data, we'll determine what most people say.
Awesome.
So there is also demographic data, which will ask, a little bit about you and like ethnicity and language spoken and religious preference, things like that will help be able to see if there are certain demographic variables that are linked to that experience, to see if maybe if you are one ethnicity, you felt more discriminated against than another.